Bon après-midi à tous et bienvenue à cette rencontre du Comité de dérogation pour la Ville d'Ottawa. Welcome everyone to this hearing of the Committee of Adjustment for the City of Ottawa. We are a quasi-judicial tribunal that holds public hearings to consider Planning Act applications, including minor variance, consents, and permissions increasingly. Our hearings are back to being in person. However, the committee can enable remote participation by video conferencing when requested to do so by the registered speakers. Do note you're being live streamed on YouTube and all of that, including the agenda for today, is archived onto the city's website if you ever want to refer back. My name is Anne Tremblay, and I will be chairing the hearing today. With me are my fellow panel members, starting with Member Coakley on my left, Member Decaillier on my right, and Member Blatherwick. We have no members that are participating at distance at this point. So in terms of the procedure, the hearings will unfold essentially as follows. So you saw an agenda at the beginning of the meeting. The agenda has essentially the order of the applications as they were submitted and approved for hearing. There is often a lot of discretion and play with that list, and you will see that today. So note that the panel members, sometimes it might seem like we really are approving some of these applications very quickly, but I can assure you we've had a chance to look at them in depth, all of the material that has been submitted on the file. So we generally ask questions if some of that material is not clear to us, but otherwise we're well prepared to make decisions. We're going to hear any oral submissions. So I normally start with a speakers list, and then I go to a general call out to anyone who may have an interest. So as part of the statutory public notification requirements, each applicant is required to post a sign on the property in question before the hearing. And then they're also required to confirm in writing that they did so, or that if that hard copy is not submitted to the committee, then we have to either do a swearing or an affirmation that that sign posting requirements have been met. So, and if we don't do that, we can't hear the application essentially, So the way we proceed is we'll deal with the adjournments first, then we'll go to the fast track or unopposed applications. And then we'll go to the applications where we probably don't need a presentation, and then we'll deal with some of the more controversial items at the end. So if you're on the speakers list, no worries. I have your name, your address, everything already. But if you're not, then, and you want to come forward and present to the panel, I will need your address. I'll need your name first, clearly, and we may need you to spell your last name. And then I'll need your municipal address. I will ask you to ensure that all of your comments and questions are through me, and all presentations are limited to 5 minutes. So at the end of the hearing on the application, the panel can either make an oral decision or we may reserve our decision. And that just means that if we've heard additional and new evidence that we need to consider further, then we adjourn on that application and then reconvene after the hearing completely, when we reconvene and have deliberation on that. In all cases, and within 10 days, the Committee of Adjustment will send the official written decision and the reasons for that decision to all parties, participants, and anyone who has requested a copy of the decision. So now to go to some of the business items that we'll have, I think I'll deal first with declarations of conflict of interest. Does anyone have a conflict with either the agenda before panel 1 or any of the agendas for panel items under panel 2 and 3? So I see Member Decaillier, go ahead, please.
For you, Madam Chair, yes, for item 166 Faraday, I have professional interactions with one of the applicants, and while I don't believe it provides any pecuniary interest involved, as I know the applicant, I would like to recuse myself from this application.
Very good. Thank you. Anyone else?
Madam Chair?
Yes, Member Blatherwick.
I have declared conflict on the application that came before the panel 2 yesterday for 184 Woodruff because that property is in my neighborhood.
All right, thank you, Member Blatherwick. Okay, so with that, then there's confirmation of the minutes. I take it members have had a chance to review the minutes of December 11th. If there's no questions or corrections at this point, we can deem them confirmed. All right, I'm seeing everyone's in agreement with that. So the December 11th, 2024 minutes are, for the record, confirmed by the panel. That takes us then to the application number 4, which is for 462 Churchill. So I'm looking for the agent to come forward, please. Against Mr. Klugman. Good afternoon, and if you could also introduce the other speaker.
Certainly. Good afternoon. My name is Phil Klugman, and joining me is Peter Hume.
All right, thank you. With that, then you're aware that an additional minor variance has been identified by staff and that we need to do, in this case, an adjournment sine die. Are you all right with that?
Yes.
No,
Oh,
sorry.
sorry, no.
That's a really good start then. Mr.
Yeah,
Kim.
sorry.
Thank you.
Go ahead.
Sorry, Madam Chair, we realize that there's an additional minor variance to be provided. Mr. Klugman's provided an application and a revised planning letter to staff. And we would like it if the committee would adjourn the application to a time specific, whether it's March preference, our preference would be March the 5th, but and just to note, we have filed, we just need to pay the fee. So we have filed for the minor variance application. Well, we filed the application with staff and a revised planning letter yesterday, correct? Correct.
So I think then if we were to do that, though, we're already looking at, just to give staff enough time, would be March 6th. Sorry, March. Yep. Oh, hang on here. I've got a list. It's got different panels. So which
March-
panels are we?
March 5th.
It would be this, it would be March, I believe March 6th. Is that correct? Just want to make sure I've got that right.
It would be March 5th, Madam Chair. However, committee staff would prefer that the application be adjourned sine die, as any new application has to be reviewed before it can be scheduled for a hearing, and there's no guarantee that the application will be ready to proceed at that point.
All right. Does that give you any comfort, Mr. Hume?
No, we're willing to accept the 19th, which is the next one. The minor variance is very minor. It's 3 centimeters. We don't believe that there will be any issues. And if there are, we'll come back to the committee and adjourn sine die if that's the case on the 19th. But we don't believe that's going to be the case.
So you're talking about February 19th, correct?
No, I'm talking about March 19th.
All right, talking about March 19th, that gives us 2 months to deal with it. All right, if it's, I think I'm okay with that. If you were looking for an earlier date, I'd be concerned, but March 19th seems to be far enough along. Comments from the committee members? Member Blatherwick.
I think the committee would appreciate it, gentlemen, if when you're back before us, that you could fully articulate the consent criteria under section 5124 of the Act.
Yes, yes, Mr. Blatherwick. We discussed that earlier in the week, and we will have a section 51 chart for you.
All right, thank you. Thank you, Madam Chair.
All right, any other comments from the panel? So to anyone out either in person or online, we're talking about adjourning this item to March 19th. Does anyone want to speak to that? Mr. Gray?
Aye. So Tim Gray with the Westboro Community Association. So we've been pretty active on this file with the neighbor, and the big concern was the boundary trees. And I got an email from him today that there's been an agreement put in place and it's all signed and everything. So, and I'm aware of the minor variance that they should have got 2 months ago. And it is minor. So the Westboro Community Association is A-okay with everything. We won't object to anything that if they're gonna ask for that, they need to ask for that 3 centimeter variance.
Yeah,
We're good
so
with that, so.
we're
there-
just talking about the adjournment right
they-
now. Are you
and-
okay with March 19th?
Yeah, the sooner the better.
All right, not for staff.
Yeah, I know,
So,
I know.
I think we're going to go with March 19th.
Yeah.
So is there anyone else in the audience or online who would like to speak to that? All right, so members of the committee, all those in favor of March 19th? All right, so for the record, you are adjourned until then, so we'll see you back in 2 months.
Thank you, Madam
Thank you.
Chair.
All right. So the next application is for 160 Clemow. I think I'm looking for Mr. Casagrande, if I understand things correctly. Come on down. Good afternoon, and if you wouldn't mind introducing the additional speaker.
Good afternoon, Madam Chair, members of committee, Brian Casagrande with Photon Consultants. I'm joined by my colleague Jillian Henderson. She's here and will likely do a presentation if we get to that point.
All right, so you're aware that there has been a request by some neighbors for time to review a Heritage Committee decision and to submit, if appropriate, some objections to that. Have you had a chance to chat with those neighbors and with their representative?
I've spoken with their representative, Ms. Bellinger, and I guess, we roughly understand what some of the concerns were. We're confused, quite honestly, that there's not been knowledge of this file because it's been in a process that includes this application as well as the heritage for about a year. And there's been engagement with the Glebe Heritage Community Association element or whatever their title is, certainly with staff on and off. And then there's been direct consultation with the abutting neighbors from what my client tells me and what we ask them to do. So it's a bit confusing, and our preference obviously would be to allow the application to move forward because from my client's perspective at this point in time, there's not a lot that they can see being able to change.
All right, okay, that answered one of my questions. Can you just tell me a little bit about the consultation that you undertook, though, as part of this process to bring forward your application?
So this process specifically with the Committee of Adjustment, there hasn't been additional consultation. It was really leading up to this process where all the consultation happened, Madam Chair.
All right, so there was no meeting to talk about with either the community association or with neighbors to talk about what the purpose of this application was and how it, relates to the heritage permit, for example. So none of that was done to sort of help facilitate that understanding?
No, what was done is through the heritage application, there was, I guess it was always obvious what the zoning amendments or the variances would need to be. So the plans were clear in that regard. The discussions were clear in that regard. So the plan evolved through that process with a knowledge that, and in fact, it triggered some of the variances that are before you as a result of responding to the heritage interest, both from staff and from the Glebe Community Heritage Group.
All right, okay, so just a couple more questions. So that Glebe Heritage Group is, in your opinion, how well coordinated are they? Is it tend to be a group that we see that's well organized, that moves forward? I may end up asking this question elsewhere, but I'd like your opinion on that.
I guess just speaking from my experience, Madam Chair, is, the main heritage area may even be the only heritage area in the Glebe relates to the Clemow corridor on both sides. So that you would hope and expect that they would be abundantly connected and interested in making sure that those neighbors have opportunity for engagement, either formally or informally. It's a tight-knit community. I've lived there for many years, and so I would be shocked to think that there wasn't enough overlap that the neighbors on the street wouldn't know. And my clients were quite concerned about that because, they've lived in this neighborhood for many years and have been talking about this project with their neighbors for many years. It has been, more theoretical than until a year ago when it started to take shape. So it hasn't been a secret, and there was no intention from the beginning for it to be such.
All right, thank you for that. And I guess my last question to you is there an appeal process to the heritage permit? And just tell me a little bit about that process and timelines.
So that process is complete, Madam Chair. There is no appeal available for any of these neighbors. Effectively, and this is something I actually want to be clear. I read the dialogue from Ms. Bellinger summarizing our discussion. There was one thing that I don't think was accurately summarized there. I didn't say and wouldn't say that this was an as of right and that this application wasn't necessary. What I was explaining to Ms. Bellinger is that from my perspective, the design is enshrined basically by the heritage permit. Now this is a secondary element. What I was mistaken about at the time is my understanding was, so as you probably know, Madam Chair, any lot of record now in the province has the ability to have 3 units on it. And so my erroneous expectation at that point in time is that they could actually connect this building underground if they wanted to, and it wouldn't violate the heritage permit. But I found out later doing more research that you're not actually allowed to connect a building underground in that manner. And so the zoning, we would need a variance to effectively have that. So there isn't an as of right to build this building as I thought, but that was what I was getting at. I wasn't implying that we don't need to come and get these variances.
All right, thank you. Members of the panel, any questions for Mr. Casagrande or Ms. Henderson? All right, so I'm going to open it up to anyone who may have an interest in this application. We're talking about the adjournment, not the merits of the application. So come forward and please your name and municipal address, please, for the record.
My name's Debbie Bellinger. I'm with Nelligan Law and the Real Estate and Development Group. And I'm here on behalf of the owners of 171 Clemow, Oakley Semple and Pamela Semple. I know they were away on holidays. I don't know to what extent the postal strike impacted this. They certainly are active members of the community, but did not know until they returned the week of January 6th that this was going ahead. So I was retained later last week and have not had the reasonable opportunity to consult further with them. I know they spoke to a number of other neighbors on the weekend who were equally uninformed despite having a great community association. I also live in the neighborhood. So we're asking for an adjournment to get the additional background that was not posted on the city website, being the heritage, but also to have some discussions with city planning staff, given the very brief half-line statement on the severance report that staff see no issue under OP with the severance or the zoning. It's a combination of two. And my concern in proceeding today is it's not a simple matter. It's a situation where, yes, we have heritage, and yes, there's been lots of review, and everyone at this table supports intensification. But I don't see how one can move forward quickly simply because there's heritage in place. And yes, there was a proposed lot shown, no doubt, to the heritage people as to how the house was going to be configured on the lot. But just as this committee does not ever delve into design elements, heritage does not tell this committee whether a lot is of adequate area, adequate size, and consistent with the lot fabric of the surrounding area. Those are complex issues. We'd like the opportunity to consult further with city staff on that and with the applicant with a view to coming to some level of understanding that would allow the development to proceed in an acceptable manner.
So if I understand correctly, your clients did not have any indication that there had been a heritage permit process that had been undertaken by the landowner through, I guess, I don't know whether FOTAN was retained at that time, but that process started, I think we heard from Mr. Casagrande over a year ago. I just want to get from you whether or not they were aware at all of that.
To my understanding, no.
So,
I asked if they had a copy. They said no, they were not aware of it before. They were surprised by the application for the severance. Whether they should have been, I haven't even had a chance to look into what circulation would have been done on that application and whether it's a match to the circulation area we see here.
yeah, so from my understanding, the Committee of Adjustment has met all of the regulatory requirements for notice for this particular application. What I want to know a little bit more about, though, is the consultation process under the heritage permit. And for that, I'm asking Mr. Casagrande to enlighten us.
Certainly. So there, to my knowledge, there's no obligatory consultation beyond what the notices are for the city. I did ask the owners to summarize what those engagements and consultations were that they've done informally or formally. So I have an email that I can just briefly summarize for you in that regard, Madam Chair. So starting in December of 2023 through to January of 2024 was when they first started meeting with city staff. And that included both the planning staff as well as heritage staff at the city. So they've been in lockstep in these two applications, to my knowledge, from the beginning. They recommended that they consult with the Glebe Heritage Committee as well as the city councillor. And so in addition, they adjusted their plans. They removed certain elements to the design. There was, for example, there was a depressed driveway originally. That's why we have a shared driveway right now that's leading to the back. January to May of 2024, they met with and corresponded several times with the Glebe Community Heritage Committee members, and they kept the councillor's office informed throughout the process. They further refined the plans, excuse me, to adjust certain issues related to the front porch, the cladding material, and so on. This is all related to compatibility interests relative to the Heritage Conservation District plan. Then in the summer of 2024, they met with and corresponded with city staff to refine the plans further, address remaining comments, and ensure that the application could move forward to Heritage Committee. At Heritage Committee, there was heritage approvals sought, and at Heritage Committee, the Glebe Community Association Committee was in full support, written, and staff were in full support, and there were absolutely no opposition at the Heritage Committee. And then finally, where are we here? Sorry. November 2024 is when we submitted the Committee of Adjustment applications that are before you, and they've been discussing this with, they said, 3 of their closest neighbors, I don't know which ones, throughout the process.
All right, so I think I heard from you that there were adjustments made to the plans over time related mainly to the Heritage District plan, not necessarily through consultation with neighbors. Is that correct?
Well, I don't believe the neighbors that they consulted with said anything with respect to changes. They were comfortable with it, was what they said through the process. The changes were driven largely by staff, and they were supported and known by the Glebe Heritage Community Group.
All right, thank you. I just want to get a call to the members. Does any member want further clarification on the process, the heritage process? So that we know, okay. So if just to recap then, there's really no official technical circulation or public circulation required under that process. However, there had been outreach to the Glebe Heritage Committee. Is that correct?
Sorry to mislead you, Madam Chair. There is a process, there is a notice that gets sent out. My clients speak to having received it themselves in the mail. So there is a process. I thought you were asking about what did we do outside of the process, and that was what I tried to summarize.
So is it the same as the Planning Act requirements in terms of circulation?
I don't know that.
All right, maybe we can call on, who are we looking for here? Is it Ms. Horn? Can you enlighten us, please, on that public consultation process under the heritage permit?
Thank you, Madam Tremblay. So essentially, there are 2 sort of different levels of the heritage permit process. So there's at the staff level and and a council level. So from what the applicant is describing, it seems like it was a a council level, which, but I can get some more specifics on the public notification process if you'd like.
Okay, so that's kind of important to us to understand the level of engagement that would have been, the distribution and the level of engagement in order to really ascertain whether or not the neighbors would have had that kind of, the opportunity to see the foresight coming with regards to the variances, because that would have been part of the discussion of the heritage permit anyway. I agree with you, Ms. Bellinger, 100%. They're not there to talk about the merits of the variances that are being requested, but it would seem that there may have been a heads up that this was coming in terms of an application. So I'm just trying to make sure we understand when you say that nobody really was aware of anything happening, that in fact, that, there was no other opportunity for them other than the planning circulation. And it's sounding like there might have, they missed the boat is what it's really sounding like. Go ahead.
I disagree that they missed the boat if they weren't given a similar type of notice that you would have with this application. I can tell you they were sufficiently surprised and upset when they tell me they have not seen the decision and were not aware of it, that there likely wasn't a notice. I don't know because I haven't had time to investigate that with the city staff, but there certainly was no consultation with the owners on the circulation map for this application prior to this application being filed. And they've noted that it was filed on December 2nd, that we had a clear 2-week break. I think everyone enjoyed that this year because the way Christmas fell. They come back January 6th and they have a few days to prepare.
So we're going to get a little clarification. I see that Ms. O'Connell has her hand up. So Ms. O'Connell, it's over to you, please.
I'm just asking for the indulgence of the committee. I'm trying to connect with a heritage planner at this very moment. And so I think if the committee can deal with other matters, I think it will just take about 5 minutes and I'll get clarity from the heritage planner specifically on the public process.
All right. Okay. We'll give that a few minutes. Does anybody on the committee have any questions coming out of any of that? Procedural. All right. So Ms. Bellinger, going to give you another 2 minutes. Anything else you want to add? Because I am going to make a call out to anybody else.
Well, I would just add that regardless of the response we get from Heritage, we can establish that there hasn't been any consultation on this particular application. And if it were me, I would go back to the point saying, well, Heritage, if I were a neighbor, isn't dealing with lot size and setbacks and variances. So I think we're dealing with 2 separate applications. I agree they're blended, but there wasn't effective consultation prior to this application.
So we did verify with committee staff. As far as we were advised, all of the requirements of the Planning Act for consultation have been met on this application. So I don't know what else could have been done in relation to that. So I'm just going to make a call. Is there anyone else in the audience, either online or in person, who would like to speak to the request for adjournment? Okay, I'm not seeing anybody. Ms. O'Connell, not to put you on the hot seat, but have you got anything for us?
It's okay. That's what we're here for, to provide information. And so the heritage planners confirmed that they heritage staff issued a letter and application details to residents within a 30-meter radius. They posted application material on our development information website, and a representative of the community association attended a heritage-specific pre-application consultation and spoke to their support at the Built Heritage Committee meeting where the application was considered.
All right, thank you, Ms. O'Connell. So that's all documented, which is very clear to the committee at this point that not only was this process for consultation met, but so was the previous process, which would have given a heads up that this process was coming in the first place. So based on that, then, committee members, I'm inclined to hear this application. Other thoughts? Yeah, all right. So we are not adjourning this application. We will hear it. So we're stepping it down and we'll see you a little bit later. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Madam Chair.
All right. Okay, well then that takes us to our agenda. We have a couple of fast tracks. We've got 3. So I'm going to read out, I don't need to see the agents for this. Essentially, these are applications where they've either been unopposed, and if there were any concerns, they've been resolved at this point. So application number 2 for 703 Churchill, application number 6, 13 Lowrey, application number 7, 2006 Rideau River. The committee has had a chance to review all of these. I'm going to give one call out. Anyone have an interest in any of those applications? Either anyone online or in person? If not, we're going to go to a vote. All right. And was there any questions? No, I think we're good. So all those in favor? All right, so for the record, those 3 applications, 703 Churchill, 13 Lowrey, 2006 Rideau River are approved. So, okay, so that will take us then to some additional, or the remainder of our agenda. Let me just catch up with this. All right. Like to deal with 308 Atlantis, if we could, please. That's application number 3. Again, good afternoon, and just your names for the record, please.
Good afternoon. My name is Evan Saunders from Foten Planning and Design, and I'm joined by my colleague Brian Casagrande as well from Foten Planning and Design.
All right, so no presentation required. This almost hit the fast track list. But I understand there's some questions. I'm just going to open it up to the panel at this point. Any questions on any of this? Yes, Member Blatherwick, go ahead, please.
I'm reviewing your presentation, gentlemen, and I refer to page 15 when you're going through the consent criteria. And it's specifically item I, the adequacy of utilities and municipal services. You say in there that the subject property is municipally serviced and is not anticipated to place undue strain on the existing servicing capacity for the area. So in other words, there is sufficient reserve capacity in both wastewater, potable water supply, and there's also a stormwater system that'll handle whatever is going to be created by this project. Might we to believe that? Somebody had to tell you that.
Yeah, so Mr. Blatherwick, I guess the best way to summarize that is, in our experience in working in the community, we're not aware of any issues. And we rely on the city planning staff through their review to flag any issues. That's historically how that goes. So we make that statement on that basis.
So you're waiting for building permit.
It could be if that comes up at that point, but it's never been my experience that we would get that far before that issue on something so small as a single lot would be flagged.
Okay. All right. Thanks.
Anyone else? Member King?
Thank you, Madam Chair. My question is for the applicant. I was looking at, if we're looking at page 13 of the application, I noticed that my understanding of the project, there's an existing single-family detached dwelling, and you are building on, I guess, what is currently a driveway, and the new, I guess, retained lot, or the new lot will have a driveway, and I'm just confirming that there will be no front yard parking in the existing dwelling that's remaining?
So this application, as you've read through the materials, it seeks to correct some errors as part of the previous survey and address an inconsistency related to one of the setbacks on the retained lot. The variances don't apply to the severed lot in terms of the concept that's shown on the plans, but we still provided it for the committee's consideration. previous minor variances applying to the severed lot and the proposed dwelling would all still apply in this case. And they would have to comply with all relevant zoning bylaw provisions, notwithstanding those that were otherwise approved through the previous minor variance application.
Okay, thank you.
So the revision that was made actually makes the severed parcel slightly larger, is that correct?
Through you, Chair, no, the previous survey and our reference plan, the lot area was incorrectly noted on the reference plan. As I mentioned in my cover letter, the technical dimensions of the lot have not changed. The lot width and lot depth have not changed. It's so otherwise the previous consent application, the area, if you were to multiply the width by the depth, would have equaled what we are now proposing through this consent application. So it's merely a technical error in terms of the plans that were previously provided, in addition to the interior side yard setback.
All right, thank you for that clarification. Yes, Member Coakley.
So just following up on that, and at the risk of being facetious, somebody got their math wrong. They forgot how to multiply.
Less so math, more so the indication on the plan, the number that was actually shown on the reference plan and then referred to in the minor variance application. And since the previous application denoted a minimum area of, for clarity's sake, I'll check through. The previous application denoted requested a minor variance for a minimum lot area of 233.4, whereas it was supposed to be written as 223.4. So the 2 and the 3 were mistaken and leading to the minor variance no longer applying in this case, requiring this further application.
Further questions? Member Coakley?
Yeah, I'll just confess to a little bit of kind of conceptual grappling here. You have a piece of land, you apply for a severance, it's granted, and there are variances. The severance lapses because you didn't, but the consensus is that the variances that are completely irrelevant as long as it's a single lot allow you to come back and ask for that severance again. And in a sense, the variances are there waiting to be used. Is that kind of the collective assumption here?
Correct, and explicitly related to the severed parcel. The minor variances referred to the plans previously submitted and were of the belief that these plans in relation to the severed parcel have not changed in any capacity, resulting in a different lot fabric than what was initially proposed. So we're of the understanding that the previous minor variance approval would apply and allow us to proceed with this consent.
And the related additional variance, because that load of variances fell because they were based on the incorrect number.
Related to the retained parcel, correct, for the lot area and side yard setback, correct.
Okay, I think I'm clear. That was helpful to me anyway. Okay, anyone else? I'm going to go out to the public. I don't believe I have anybody on my speakers list. Is there anyone in the audience or either here or online that would like to speak to this application for 308 Atlantis? All right, I'm not seeing any. So at this point, I think we can go to a vote. Members of the panel, all those in favor? All right, so for the record, it's unanimous and it is approved. So thank you very much for that.
Thank you.
All right. I think that takes us to 38 Clarey at this point, which is application number 5. Looking for Mr. Richardson. Is he online or in person?
Mr. Richardson appears to be online, Madam Chair. Although I will note that the name of the speaker does not appear to be Mr. Richardson, but I think it is Mr.
Sorry,
Richardson.
that's my kids' names on it. I apologize. As you can
Sorry,
see,
are
I'm
you
not a
Mr.
Zoom
Richardson?
guy.
I just need to be clear here. Are you
I
Mr.
am Mr.
Richardson?
Richardson, Chad
Ah.
Richardson. Yes.
Excellent, Mr. Richardson. Well, I don't believe we need a presentation from you, but I know the panel has some questions about this application, so I'm going to open it up to them at this point.
Sure.
All right, so just to begin, then I do have a question. Are we going to 6 units on this? Are we going from 5 to 6 with that addition?
So I've been talking with the planning department and I'm looking for the clearest path to a building permit for me. And they said a 6-unit would be ideal.
So you have 5 units now.
There's 5 existing as a legal non-conforming use. And they felt that the 6-unit wouldn't be an issue.
All right, so can you confirm that there's no, I believe, no zoning issue with this at all? So you don't need a minor variance for it. I guess this is the permission for it. Okay. What other questions did we have for? Oh, we did have some discussion, I believe, about the addition to the back. Can you tell us a little bit about that?
So there is no addition to the back. It was a failing structure that we reconstructed, repaired essentially, with obviously new materials and a proper foundation. It was essentially a 3-story building that was on a poured rubble concrete post or pier that had a beach stone at the bottom. So the engineers wanted to have that repaired immediately. There was a multiple number of structural issues with the building that needed to be addressed immediately.
So to the rear, then there's nothing beyond the back wall of the units that was introduced. So I just want to make sure there's no construction of anything additional.
No, it's in the same positioning as what we've applied for that was existing already.
All right, thank you. Questions from the committee at this point? Other? Mr. Blatherwick?
Yeah, I have a question for staff on this. I think you folks have seen the correspondence from Ms. Rathbone, which regarding 38 Clarey Avenue. Are you satisfied that all of the issues that she raised in her letter back to Mr. Richardson have been addressed?
Thank you, Mr. Blatherwick. So essentially, from my understanding, the building permit process will continue. Some of the concerns that were raised in the deficiency letter did need to be addressed through the permission. But the rest of some of those can also be addressed at the building permit stage.
As in?
Sorry, one second, Mr. Blatherwick. Is there a specific deficiency that
No,
you
you
were?
said that some of these can be resolved at the building permit stage. So what are they? Just out of curiosity.
So I believe she might have mentioned the deficiency or the opening to the potential 6th unit on the 3rd floor.
Yep.
And that would likely be addressed through the building permit stage.
Okay.
So things like the interior layout.
So as far as the department is concerned, this application meets the 3 criteria for permission. That's similar to the current use, correct?
Yes, that is correct.
More compatible with the current zoning bylaw?
Yes, that is correct.
And you don't feel the department doesn't feel there'll be any negative impacts created by this extension of the use?
Yes, that's correct.
Okay, all right. Thank you. Thank you, Madam Chair.
Thank you. I do have a question actually about your report then, Ms. Horn. You have a statement on page 2 at the very top that you say, the current application does not establish a legal parking space on the property. So if I understand your comments, it's a non-conforming front yard parking on the site that's shown on the site plan. But then in your opinion, that is not a legal space. So I'm wondering at this point, I guess my question is, should the plans be revised to remove that driveway? So in other words, if we approve it with the revision that it would remove that driveway, not so as to not somehow falsely give the impression that that's a legal space. I need your opinion on that, please.
Thank you, Madam Tremblay. I think that would be appropriate. From staff's perspective, the main scope of the application was regarding the changes to the building. There really weren't any other changes to the site proposed, from my understanding. But it would be up to you. I just wanted to highlight that from our review, it didn't look like they were legal non-conforming. They just appeared to be non-conforming.
All right, so back to you, Mr. Richardson. So I think are you following the discussion? We're talking about that parking space, the fact that it may in fact be there illegally rather than legally. And if we approve a site plan, we would want to see that parking space removed from the plan.
Yeah, I fully understand. I just want to go on the record to say that originally the front addition was on not leaning, but moved towards the west side of the property. But because of the tree permit, we had to push it over, or sorry, we have a big silver maple 60 feet high. But the arborist suggested that if we could, to move the front addition to the east side of the property and build the main floor entrance on helical posts. And I think that is now conflicting with the parking space that is in discussion. So I just want to go on note that we basically moved the addition and maybe forfeited the right of the front yard parking due to saving the tree.
Ms. Horn, does the site plan, and I'm sorry, I don't have it right before me. Does the site plan show a parking space on it, or are you just making comments about that at this point?
Thank you, Madam Chair. It did show, it had the wording of existing driveway.
All right, in that case, and I take it there's no parking space required?
That's correct.
All right, so then we will want to see that revision, please, Mr. Richardson. So it will be, if we approve it, it will be in accordance with revised plans. And for the record, it means removing that parking spot from the plans, because we're not approving that. I don't want to give any, any undue support to that parking space that's illegal today. Okay. All right. Any other questions from panel members before I go to the public on this? Yes, Member Coakley, please.
Can I just go back to the work that you said you did at the back of the building, the issue of whether something has been done at the back versus the front? So if, because, there was a comment from a member of the public that work had already been undertaken. If I understand correctly, your statement is that the work that was undertaken at the back of the building was effectively repair work. Would that be the best way of describing it? And that at this point, nothing has been done at the front of the building?
The front of the building we did start on that because of the structural issues on the interior of the building. There is a permit for that, but we needed to support the existing stone foundation with columns, and we continue with construction on building.
So you are sort of jumping the gun a little bit on the variance, or sorry, on the
I'm way jumping the gun on it with a bit of a roll of the dice on the fact that what I built is well within the R3Q zoning. So my worst case scenario was this doesn't get approved and I build a 3-story or 3-unit building as opposed to 6.
And I guess one other comment, because in the material that you submitted, or that was submitted on your behalf anyway, there's reference to limiting the occupation of the building to 12 occupants, not a discussion of how many units. I mean, I'm not aware that, I mean, I'm not aware of how you can actually limit the number of people in the building. I mean, you're not going to have 20 people. You're not going to rent to 20 people in one bedroom, but you know, is it one person in a bedroom, two people in a bedroom?
Yeah, I think that where that comment would be going was based on the bedroom. That's all.
Okay, thank you.
All right, other questions from panel members? If not, looking to my speakers list, I don't have anyone for this. So is there anyone in the audience, either here or online, who would like to speak to this application? For permission, in this case. All right, I'm not seeing anybody. So members of the panel, all those in favor? Okay. All those in favor. We're going to reserve. All right, so we're asking for a recap then, Mr. Richardson, of the four tests. Four tests?
Variance tests.
Oh, it's the variance test. So can you please recap the, I think it's two tests for permission. If you can recap, please, those, how your application meets those.
I'm sorry, I don't have my report in front of me.
Did you submit a presentation, Mr. Richardson?
I submitted a report. I don't have it in front of me right now.
Okay, but you don't have a presentation that you submitted as well with your materials?
Sorry, I submitted a one-page report. I'm just a bit confused as to the proceeding. What would be the concern of the panel?
Member Dickey, would you, thanks.
Mr. Blatherwick could articulate that better than me.
The three criteria for a permission under section 45(2) of the Planning Act are whether the proposed change is similar to the current use of the property, if it's more compatible with the current zoning bylaw, and also it considers whether the change will have any negative impacts on the surrounding area. So there's your three criteria.
Well, as a legal non-conforming 5-unit building, by increasing it with 1 unit, I can't foresee that making any sort of major change to the surrounding area, neighbors, or anything. Actually, I've been in discussions with some of the neighbors, and I purchased the building in March of 2024. And they were having major issues with the way that the building was managed, and I'm hoping that I could step in there and do a better job of that in all aspects. And I don't know, I don't think it's a major request by any means. I think that it fits into the R3 zoning. I think it aligns with any future zoning that's on reports that I've read coming down the road. It's just a legal non-conforming use, essentially.
Member Blatherwick, any follow-on questions?
No, I'm fine.
All right, so are we ready for a vote then, folks? All right, so I think what we're hearing, Mr. Richardson, is we're going to reserve on your decision. Means we'll still make a decision today, but we want to deliberate a little more fully on it before we pronounce ourselves. So with that, then I think you can have, or did I do the call out? So I don't think there was anybody who had any interest. You have 2 minutes to recap if you would like it. Mr. Richardson, would you like to recap or?
I think it's a pretty straightforward ask, to be honest.
Okay, but we are reserving, so you will get the decision within the 10 days. All right, thank you very much for your time today. All right, so we're going to move on to the, I think we'll do number 9 at this point. Looking for Mr. Ibrahimpour on a change of condition. Do we have the agent online? I don't believe he's with us here.
He doesn't appear to be online, Madam Chair.
He's not online and he's not in the audience. So I think what we'll do then is, Madam Deputy Secretary Treasurer, I think if we could step this down to the next meeting then, would that make some sense to do it on the, I guess it's February.
February 5th, Madam Chair.
All right, can we do that?
Yes, we can add it to that agenda.
All right, I guess that's what we're gonna do. All right, so on to the next, adjourn to the next meeting. That leaves us then with, I believe 2 applications. Let's go to 160 Clemow. So back to Mr. Casagrande, I believe, from the beginning.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Brian Casagrande, Jillian Henderson. Just before Jillian begins her presentation, which by the way will be her first at the committee, so we're hoping she does well. But I also want to introduce Thomas from our office, who's online in case we need him, and the owner and architect of the property, Grant Stewart, is sitting back there. I'll invite him to the front row in case you have questions for him.
All right, thank you, Mr. Casagrande. Just want panel, did you want a presentation or would you like to go to questions on this?
Wouldn't mind.
All right, we'll go ahead with the presentation. Go ahead, Ms. Henderson, the floor is yours.
Good afternoon. Thank you, Chair and members of committee. My name is Jillian Henderson, a planner with Foten Planning and Design, representing the owners of 160 Clemow Avenue. I will be summative as the committee has our rationale. Next slide, please. The purpose of the consent application is to sever the existing parcel into 2 separate lots. The property owner wishes to sever the property to accommodate the construction of a new detached dwelling on the eastern side, while retaining the existing heritage building on the western side of the property. The new dwelling has been designed in consideration of the character of the Clemow Conservation District, and a heritage permit was approved in October of 2024. Next slide, please. To facilitate the proposed severance, relief from the zoning bylaw is required to permit a reduced lot width, which is only 4 meters less than the zoning requirement for the severed lot, and 2 meters for the retained lot. A reduced lot area that is only 110 meters squared less than the zoning requirement for the severed lot, and only 20 meters squared for the retained lot, as well as additional variances to the maximum driveway width, interior side yard setback that is only 75 centimeters less than the zoning requirement, and permitted eave projection that is only 15 centimeters less than the zoning requirement. We've also submitted a new plan which eliminates one of the variances, which is the variance for reduced separation distance between an ancillary structure of 55 centimeters, whereas the zoning bylaw requires 1.2 meters. And that is between the garage, which is now proposed to be a carport, and the existing heritage house. The proposal improves site conditions by narrowing the existing driveway, reducing impervious surfaces, and increasing front yard landscaping. The proposed consent meets Section 51 of the Planning Act, aligns with the City of Ottawa's official plan, and supports the provincial policy statement by enabling residential intensification within the urban area. It is consistent with municipal and provincial policies, efficiently utilizes infrastructure, supports housing goals, and complements the surrounding lot fabric and land use. Next slide, please. This is showing the minor variances. Next slide, please. The subject property is located within the inner urban transect and designated neighborhood with the evolving overlay. The proposed consent conforms to the neighborhood policies, which encourages low-rise, context-sensitive infill that builds upon the existing neighborhood and contributes to the provision of additional housing that efficiently uses existing resources and infrastructure. The proposed development respects the official plan's policies on minimal parking that does not disrupt the public realm and contributes to an urban fabric that prioritizes walking, cycling, and transit. Next slide, please. Next slide, please. The proposed minor variances uphold the general intent and purpose of the official plan by enabling the construction of a low-rise, context-sensitive detached dwelling within a service neighborhood in close proximity to amenities and transit. The variances align with the zoning bylaws' general intent of preserving the area's detached dwelling form while supporting compatible development that fits the existing land use pattern, respects neighborhood characteristic, and ensures a consistent streetscape. Next slide, please. The proposed variances are minor in nature, involving modest adjustments that support moderate densification while preserving privacy, sunlight, and respecting the scale, form, and function of the property. They avoid negative impacts on adjacent lands and deviate only marginally from the minimum requirements under the bylaw. The proposed variances are desirable and appropriate for the land as they enable a design that better utilizes the property and contributes to the neighborhood's character. They support the development of a detached dwelling consistent with the surrounding land use patterns, avoid undue adverse impacts, and align with the official plan's policies. Next slide, please. It is our professional opinion that the proposal is appropriate and constitutes good planning, as it is consistent with the provincial policy statement for intensification within settlement areas. It conforms to the policies and objectives of the official plan. It includes lots that are regular in shape, have frontage on municipal roads, and can connect to full municipal services, and the application meets the 4 tests as set out in the Planning Act. This proposal represents a thoughtful and collaborative approach to intensification, balancing the need for additional housing with the preservation of neighborhood character, and aligns with municipal and provincial planning objectives. Thank you.
All right, thank you, Ms. Henderson. Right under the wire. Not that we actually impose that on the presenters, but very well done. Okay, so I'm just going to open it up to the panel members for questions at this point. I can go first. So the one thing for me that's still sort of missing here is sort of the lotting fabric. So how does this proposal, so if I understand things correctly, the minimum lot width is 15 meters. We're literally splitting the two.
Sorry, Madam Chair. I was just asking because I had actually asked us to put an image in the presentation, but it might not have made it in there. I can work with one of the slides, but sorry, I didn't hear the end of your question. I wanted to make sure it was there, but I guess it's not.
Yeah, because that's fairly important, right? And we had this discussion in the pre-meet, about essentially, maintaining a compatibility in a streetscape. Whether you're talking about front-facing garage or you're talking about starting to change the lot fabric along a street front, both of those have an impact visually. And so in my mind, it's important to have that lotting fabric information to say, this won't substantially be out of character for that street frontage. So not sure how to get at it, because I looked at your report. I couldn't find the lotting fabric information in your report. I saw something about the Heritage District, but so here's the only thing we can do, Ms. Henderson, at this point, without having the benefit of a plan, is we need your professional opinion at this point that so tell us, in your opinion, how this proposal meets the compatibility and the character of the area from a lotting standpoint.
If you go to slide, I believe it's slide 6 or 7. There is a photograph of the existing condition of the house, as well as the proposed.
She's talking about the lotting. So Madam Chair, just one, there was one aerial that showed that a little bit, and I think it was slide 2, we could bring it up. Does the committee allow for Thomas, for example, to show something from his screen? Because I did email Thomas and Jillian yesterday saying, can you put this in the slideshow? And it's exactly what you're talking about.
I have no issues at all with Mr. Freeman putting up. I don't know how he's going to do it. He's going to have to share a screen with us.
Let's see how his capabilities are. If not, I can work with this, but I hope he can.
Madam Chair, unfortunately, only committee coordinators are able to share their screen.
Okay, I was thinking he was going to turn his screen around. I don't know how he would do it, but oh, I guess he couldn't even do that. All right, okay, I understand what you're saying. So we will use this. Mr. Casagrande, go ahead.
So what the image that I sent Thomas shows that this doesn't is, but you can, I think, envision it is around each of those houses is a lot. And effectively, this lot is one of the largest on Clemow. There are others, I think the one maybe 5 to the left there that are very similar in size. Yes, but in general, they're pretty much smaller than what we've got proposed. So ultimately, yes, the new lot created and the retained are going to be marginally, I'd say, smaller than what you have along this streetscape, but not significantly. And then the nice thing about this particular property, which is why we were so comfortable bringing this application forward, and I can say quite honestly that we would likely struggle with others along the streetscape, which is, I assume, why some of the neighbors would be concerned, is it's an end condition, right? You're right up against the Kunstad Sports property, another client of mine that's been contemplating redevelopment at some point in the future. But it's not like we're changing the fabrics in the heart of the street. So all in all, I think that's why staff have been comfortable with it. That's why they're also comfortable with it relative to the heritage objectives, because as Ms. Henderson touched on, when you look at that property, I'd say about 3/4 of the street front is all hard surface. It's this massive driveway, all parking. And through this initiative, the trade-off was, let us actually result in less driveway and hard surface on the street in order to be able to advance more softscaping and more landscaping and certainly preserve what's there. And that is, in my read, fundamental to the heritage conservation objectives.
All right, I believe Member Coakley has a question.
Actually, if we could flash that back up, I just kind of want to follow on so I understand properly. So looking at the area enclosed in the blue square, do I kind of understand correctly that what you're planning to do is, that looks like a structure on the far right-hand side, the Bank Street side, that comes down, or
Yes.
is that?
It's a carport.
Okay, so
Yeah.
that comes down. There's something that sort of appears to be in the middle. That comes down.
Part of it, yeah.
You draw the lot line there, and then you build something new on the right-hand side. That's
Exactly, Mr. Coakley. You're effectively removing all that mass and structure that's kind of east of, you can see a break there in the existing home. I think there were additions at some point in time. We're really bringing it back to its original structure and, modifying the existing home accordingly to allow for a shared driveway to flow through the middle there, and then a new, smaller home to be built on the remaining lands.
Thanks for clarifying that. Just while I have the microphone, I always do appreciate your document packages where you list the table of all of the zoning requirements and whether or not you do or do not comply with them. I find it a very helpful way of just getting an appreciation for how much you're trying to shoehorn into the bylaw. But it is I particularly appreciate that type of, that information in your packages. So thank you.
Appreciate that.
All right, so I just got, and I might have to ask you to turn your mic. I'm getting an echo. Thank you. So, Ms. Horn, I'm finding this interesting because the subject property is barely more than 15 meters, which is the minimum lot width. So if we compare that to the plan that we just saw on that slide, it looks like a number of the lots in and around Clemow are in fact less than the 15 at this point. Have you had a chance to look at that? And can you confirm that?
Thank you, Madam Chair. So, sorry, just to rephrase, your question is whether there are lots under 15 meters on
It would
Clemow?
appear there are a lot. In fact, if this particular property sort of barely meets that 15-meter width, and we saw the others without having a more accurate plan, just seeing it seemed that many might actually be under the 15-meter. And I'm just trying to ascertain that to see whether or not there's a pattern of undersized lot frontages on that streetscape. So can you confirm that for me?
Thank you, Madam Chair. There are certainly some that are under the 15 meters lot width. For example, at 167 Clemow. And so it looks like there is some variation there.
All right, okay. I think that sort of does, I think we've gone as far as we can with the whole lotting fabric. So any other questions about any of the other variances in particular? So, okay, if not, then I'm going to go to the public portion, and I believe Ms. Bellinger wants to speak with us. So come on forward, and got 5 minutes. Go ahead, the floor is yours.
Thank you very much. I think we've done some narrowing of the issues in our earlier conversation, and the presentation materials from Photon are helpful in that regard as well. I want to focus on the lot fabric. That's the fundamental issue in my view. Before you even get to the variances of how the building fits on the lot, I want to focus on the size of the lot. It's a relevant factor, not just under zoning, but under official plan and how it relates to the streetscape, as you've identified. I looked at Plan M8, which is extremely difficult to find. That was the original Clemow Powell. So the glebe was divided up. You had the St. Andrews glebe, you had the Clemow Powell sector. This plan of subdivision was done on Clemow and Powell. The lot sizes are very different than what you find to the south on Glebe Avenue. All of the lots on Plan M8 are 50 meters, as shown on the plan of subdivision, and all the lots along the street remain described as full lots. I did not have time to retain a planner, but I did walk the street again. There are no severed lots. There were a couple of redevelopments where large homes have again been centered, new homes have been centered in the existing 50-foot lot. The difference with this lot is it had the original 50-foot, lot 38, on which the home is constructed, the existing home, and it had another 25 feet buffer, the other half of which is with Kunstad. So they're effectively lot line adjusting, if you will. They've got a 25-foot lot, half of lot 37, and they're going to take some of lot 38. I can assure you there isn't another lot on Clemow that would have a lot area and lot width that's effectively 2/3 of what is required. They're reducing by a full third compared to the rest of the streetscape, all the way up to Lion Street. There's not one example. So it very much changes the streetscape on the notion that it's a fringe or edge feature. I think that makes it ever more important. You're dealing with a historic street. We've got heritage approval, but heritage doesn't deal with lot fabric or lot area or the variances. So I'm very concerned that we're hearing today that that's a marginal item, that a 1/3 reduction in a lot size when there isn't any other similar lot on the street with a 10-meter frontage, that that's somehow acceptable. I can tell you the 50 feet original lots match almost exactly with the 15 meters we have today. And the city's seen fit to carry that through 1964 and all subsequent amendments that came in after these homes and lots were laid out. So I don't see any consistency or evidence put before you that it is consistent with the existing lot flat fabric. I think that's, and it was an excellent report from Fotan, but I think that particular point of lot fabric, an area of the lot has been glossed over because of the heritage approval. So I have an issue with the dimensions. As for the variance, the lot dimensions, lot area. As for the variances, my key concerns are the side yard and the idea that it makes good sense to project eaves into already a narrow side yard. The 1.2 meters is there for not only buffering and pleasant living, but also for fire protection. And I don't think in this day and age, extending eaves significantly into the side yard setback makes any sense at all. And then if we could have the severance plan or the variance plan on the screen, if it would be possible to get that pulled up. The parking, they've looked for a variance for the limiting distance between the parking garage for the retained lot and the what's going to be left, I think, of an addition on the original house. So they're going to tear down the family room, tear down the carport, put the driveway up the middle, and you can see that there remains what appears to be an addition at the back of the retained house that extends well into the 2.6 meter width requirement for a valid parking space. There's a lot of front yard parking now, and I agree it's an improvement to put it in the back. But if the back is not effective parking because it's partly obstructed because there hasn't been enough demolition, then I think there is going to be an urge to park back in the front. And I don't think there's anything we're going to see by way of site plan agreement or anything else that would say all this wonderful front yard landscaping and removal of hard landscaping and parking will be enforced. I think if the rear yard parking doesn't meet zoning requirement because of the obstruction, it won't be used. And there'll be nothing to prevent it going back in the front. Thank you.
All right, thank you very much. I'm glad you raised that because for whatever reason, I was under the impression the frontage of the property was actually 15 meters. It's not, it's 23. And so we're reducing from 15 to 12.8 in one case, and you're correct, 15 to 10. And then a very valid point on the obstructed garage, hadn't noted that. So if Mr. Casagrande, you could speak to that because it does seem that you would have an obstructed parking space. Or
Thank you, Madam Chair. I'd love to respond to all of the comments, but I'll start with that one. So I think Ms. Henderson noted, and I assume we sent yesterday, because that's what I understood, a revised plan. The change was related to the rear structure. So Ms. Bellinger, when she and I had that discussion, I took the time to look at it with this in mind, and I felt like she's right. It actually is potentially an issue back there. So we challenged Mr. Stewart with that. I don't think it had come up in any of these discussions with the city. And he said, you know what, no problem. We're going to turn that into a carport. We're going to make sure that our structural elements are pulled back so that we meet the separation requirements and the whole thing will function more comfortably. So that is a stipulation. And if you didn't receive the plan, then I'd ask that you condition any approval if you grant it on that, because that's what our intent is. Related to the side setback, I think what the committee should understand is at 0.74, whatever it is that we're at, the R1 zone has some side yards that are permitted to be as low as 0.6. Some that are, permitted to be all the way up to 1.2. So it's clearly anticipated in the zoning bylaw that as long as you have one that's shorter and the other one that's larger, presumably for egress purposes and things of that nature, it's an acceptable setback. So we're exceeding the minimum that you'd see in the R1 already with that. And so we don't have any concern with the property functioning. I think it's an appropriate way of actually providing more space within the lot so that it reads more like the streetscape as opposed to putting this separation on the side of the edge of the retail And that was certainly the thinking behind it in our dialogue with the city. Relative to this notion or the concerns over the lot fabric, my perspective on it, and it goes back to that slide 2, if you can bring it up, is you actually have a lot of diversity in lot fabric in the immediate area. So on the other side of the street, or the other side of the property line to the east, is a large retail lot. And so you've got a pocket here, and even behind us, actually, there's smaller lot fabric as well. So you've got a pocket here of something that's quite different than the rest of the streetscape. And that's the argument and the point that I was trying to bring forward. And that's why FO10 would have difficulty rationalizing this type of application in the middle of the streetscape. Yes, so you can see behind us, we're pretty much there's 2 lots of pretty much the same. In fact, they're a bit narrower than our lot of record, if you can see that. And then, of course, how it dramatically changes when you get to Bank. And of course, you've got this awkward reality at Clemow right there, where there's a sort of a notch happening in the streetscape, where on the north side, it carries on a little further towards Bank, and then this side, it stops short. So it's not the pocket, if you will, of the streetscape that you would normally say, are we creating something that's going to look obtuse and feel wrong? And the last thing I think is really important the committee understands, and I was getting at this a bit earlier, Ms. Tremblay, with this as of right notion of 3 units that the province has created. When we were first consulted on this property, given that this is an in-family transaction, if you will, we made them aware that you could actually expand the existing building and turn it into a triplex. And so as of right. And so that's, I mean, you'd need your heritage approvals, but that can be done as of right. So you're going to have this form of building mass in one way or another. What's really before the committee is it appropriate to do so in a way that creates a new single-family lot in a way that we think has been done very conscientiously? And so I think the Clemow needs to understand that, or the residents of Clemow need to understand that there's a built form opportunity that's going to emerge not only in this street, on this lot, but on the street. And we can't ignore that in considering some degree of change. The question is the degree of change reasonable, sensitive, and all the relative considerations under the Planning Act test?
All right, thank you, Mr. Casagrande. All right, so with that, I'm going to make a call out for any other speakers, either here today or online. All right, I am not seeing any others. So,
Excuse me, Madam Chair. I just wanted to clarify, there was supposed to be a revised plan filed with committee staff.
Didn't receive it.
We did not receive any revised plans.
So I would ask you, Madam Chair, to consider that in any decision, because all it is effectively is the back is not a garage, it's a carport, and then the supporting elements are pulled away to achieve that separation.
all right, so we're okay if we choose to approve it, to do it on the basis of as revised, dated on, I don't know, whatever date it is that you have, as long, and we've got a good description from you, and if staff doesn't feel when they get that revised plan that it's in keeping with what you've described, we're back to having a discussion, right? Okay, so I have no other speakers. Go ahead, Member Coakley.
No, I'd just like to clarify, because of the discussion around lot sizes and some numbers were being bandied around there. And I'm sorry, I missed your name.
Ms. Bellinger.
Ms. Bellinger, if I heard you correctly, you were expressing the concern that the lot sizes were going to be about 2/3 of what was the minimum lot area. Now, my calculations on the information provided, obviously by Fontaine, is that the severed lot, the bylaw requirement is 450 square meters. 337.31 square meters is actually 74.8%, not 2/3. And in the retained lot, 450 square meters against 429.18, that's actually 95.3%. I mean, I'm not discounting the issue, but I just think that we, our record should have exact numbers or accurate numbers and I mean, if I've miscalculated somewhere, please somebody, tell me that. But
I think you're right, Mr. Coakley. I assume what Ms. Bellinger was referring to is the actual lots versus the bylaw, but I'll let her clarify.
That's correct. And it is it's the newly created lot, the severed lot, that where the frontage is really, it's too small for the street. There's nothing else like it on the street. And to Mr. Casagrande's comment, sure, there are other triplexes on the street and beautiful expansions of some of those older buildings into their existing lots to create additional units. But there's nothing like this on the street.
So if I could, it's the frontage on the street that you're concerned with, not the actual lot size.
Less so than the area. They
Okay.
flow from them because they've taken the 25 feet they have in lot 37. They have the west half of lot 37. And they've added 8 feet that they've taken off lot 38, front to rear. So yes, the frontage is too narrow. In my view, the lot is too small. I certainly wouldn't say it's marginal. That's what we're hearing from Mr. Casagrande. And I don't see a 1/3 reduction in the frontage, front to back, marginal.
All right, I think I'd like to complete the discussion at this point on that. We don't have any other speakers. Mr. Casagrande, I'm going to give you 2 minutes to recap, but I can assure you we're looking at a reserved decision. So the floor is yours.
Excuse me, Madam Chair, just before we go to that, did I hear correctly that there's changes to the variances that are being requested as well?
Yes.
And I'm going to get to that because
Okay.
it's going to be, we're going to do the conditions and we're going to do the revised variances when we're done.
Okay, thank you,
So we
Madam
can
Chair.
just confirm it. Thank you.
Madam Tremblay, all I wanted to point out is if this image is perfect, is in the event that the severance and the variances weren't granted, the natural consequence and next step for my clients, and this isn't meant in a threatening way, it's just meant in a pragmatic, practical consideration, would be to seek to attach the blue form to the white form. And all we'd need to do to maintain the integrity of the design is to have a connection at grade or above grade between the two houses. And then all of a sudden, it's a secondary dwelling unit. And so I know Ms. Bellinger's concerned about lot fabric, but in reality, if you're walking down the street and you're living in this neighborhood, are you going to ever see the lot fabric on your day-to-day basis? And the answer is no. You're going to see built form. And that has been the focus of this application. And I submit respectfully that that's what the committee should be focused on in considering it.
All right, thank you, Mr. Casagrande. Now to our Deputy Secretary Treasurer's point. So we are approving the minor variances as revised, which is the deletion of D under A00304, correct?
Separation distance
Yes.
requirement, yes.
Okay, and that's the only one that it applies to. So it's just D that we are removing. And you have had a chance to look through the conditions.
Yes, we have.
Everything's okay with that?
Yes.
All right, so the committee is reserving their decision on this and you'll get the decision in 10 days. Thank you very much for your time.
Thank you.
All right, so with that, we have one last application, which I believe our member can't participate in. So on that, it's number 166 Faraday, looking for Mr. Sewer, Ms. Sewer. Very confusing to me, obviously. All right, so Ms. Sewer, I'm gonna give you time to sit down. It's the last application, always a bit. So you know that staff has a concern with the application. And you're looking for, I think, their only variances for the front facing garage. Is that correct?
Yeah, that's correct.
All right, so no presentation. We've seen this type of application many times. Any questions from either Mr. Blatherwick or Mr. Coakley? Yes, go ahead, Member Coakley.
I note in your application, you provided a couple of letters from, letters of support from abutting neighbors in Appendix A. I note that none of them make any reference to the variance that's being discussed. I note as well that the text that, by the looks of things, your clients provided to their neighbors makes no reference to the variance. So given that, I'm kind of wondering what you think we should do with these, because to my mind, they're kind of irrelevant. because we're discussing a variance, there's no reference in this, there's no evidence that they even know that the variance was going to be sought.
Madam Chair, if I may, Murray Chown, joining you virtually. I don't have the letters in front of me, Member Coakley, but the comments that have been provided by the neighbors indicate that they have no objections to the proposed development. And that proposed development includes an attached front-facing garage. They would have been fully aware that the proposal included a garage.
Well,
Whether they were advised that that garage required a variance or not doesn't alter their opinion on the project, and that they don't have concerns with the design of the project, including the front-facing attached garage.
Well, with respect, Mr. Chairman, through you, Madam Chair, there is absolutely no discussion of the design in the text that they were invited to sign. So, I mean, you can think that they support it, but quite frankly, as far as I'm concerned, these letters aren't worth anything, and they don't sway me one way or the other.
Let me put it another way.
So
none of the neighbors approached have raised any concerns with respect to the minor variance that's before the committee this afternoon.
fair enough, but I guess from, Mr. Member Coakley's comments is if you'd like to submit this kind of evidence to us in the future, just be sure that it is very clear within the letters that the neighbors would be signing that they are completely aware and signing to the variances that are being proposed. That way, at least we can make a connection with it. We can say, okay, yes, we're comfortable that in fact they were fully aware. Not that we think you're lying, Mr. Chown or Ms. Sewer in any way. It's just that from an evidential standpoint, it would be a little clearer for us to accept it in those terms.
Thank you for that.
All right, so any other questions about the front-facing garage on this? It's very simple. We've seen this many times. So, all right. If not, I'm going to go to the public at this point. I'm not seeing anyone on my speakers list. So, and there's very few people left here. So anybody online have any comments to the committee regarding the application for minor variance at 166 Faraday Street? All right. So do we want to go to a vote, members, or do we want to, you want to vote? Okay, so all those in favor? Member Blatherwick, you're in favor. Member Coakley is not in favor, and I would be inclined to also not be in favor. So the application is then denied. And the reasons for me is that I was not compelled by some of the planning evidence provided that in fact the streetscape analysis got it wrong. So in other words, we only saw that there were four similar units in a count of 21, which for us is not even on, it's not even on the fence. So, and we are bound to hold
with
essentially-
respect,
yeah.
if you were
Oh, sorry, let me finish, Mr. Chow. I could.
No, I have a problem. If you were inclined to turn this down, why did you not ask for a presentation?
Because it's a front-facing garage, and I believe we've seen this type of proposal before. We have your report. We've had a chance to see all of it.
Don't we
We've
have
had
a
a
right
chance
to
to
make a
read it.
presentation?
So Mr. Chow, I don't believe we're at the point of debate at this point. I think
No, but it's a
committee's made
point
a
of,
decision.
it's a procedural question.
No, it's not a procedural. We're not bound to request.
You're bound to hear a
presentations.
presentation.
No, we're not bound to hear presentations. We have a whole unopposed fast-tracking proposal or
Right, and if somebody
procedures
wishes
that
to
don't
speak-
require that.
If somebody wishes to speak, they can. You haven't given us the opportunity to speak to the application.
So we had the opportunity for questions to Ms. Soar, anything that was unclear to us. You will have 2 minutes to recap at the end. Actually, we didn't give you that. You're quite correct. We missed the recap, and we can do that now. So Ms. Soar, the floor is yours.
With respect, Madam Chair, I think we are functus because we have decided whether our decision should
All
be
right.
done differently. But I believe we have already voted. We are functus. We have no ability to hear anything else unless.
I'm just looking for confirmation
Yeah,
from
no.
our Deputy Secretary Treasurer.
Yes, Madam Chair, you did vote and it has been recorded.
All right, well, thank you very much. I guess that's where we're at with that. I apologize to the agent for not giving you the chance for recap. I think that was the one part that I did miss. We're not bound to presentations. If the agents do want to do a presentation, they can quite willingly request that. Nobody requested it. It didn't seem to be a problem to go straight to questions. So in the future, then, if you would like to do a presentation, please don't hesitate to ask to do one, and we will grant it. So thank you very much. And I think if there's no other business, I'd like to be able to call this meeting adjourned. Yes. Okay. Thank you very much.